Hello, welcome to Storytime. Today we're going to hear the story of Little Red Riding Hood. The Grimm brothers have a version of this, but it's even older than them. Their version is sometimes called Little Red Cap. And there's a couple different versions. This is the version that I'm telling today. I don't know if it's in a book or not, but here we go. Once upon a time, there was a lovely little girl who lived in a small village on the woods. Everyone loved her so much, but no one loved her as much as her grandmother. One year for her birthday, her grandmother gave her a beautiful hooded red cloak, and she wore it everywhere. So much so that everyone in the village started calling her Little Red Riding Hood. One spring, her grandma got a little sick and had to stay home at her own house, which was on the other side of the woods. And Little Red Riding Hood and her mother needed to help her stay safe and healthy, so they made her some soup, and they had a flask of fortified wine, because it was a long time ago and wine made you feel better. Probably still does. I don't know. Anyway, soup, wine, and some good hearty bread. And her mother packed it all up into a picnic basket and said, Little Red Riding Hood, I need you to take this to your grandmother because she's sick and she needs this food to feel stronger and healthy. When you come to her house, announce yourself so she knows it's you and not a stranger. On the way there, stick to the road, don't wander off, and walk like a reasonable person. Don't try to skip and run and jump too much because you might fall and spill the food. Because, you know, sometimes it's more fun to play in the woods than to walk a straight line through the path. So Little Red Riding Hood listened to her mother and started walking through the woods down the path. She'd only been down the path about halfway when a wolf spotted her, and he approached her and said, Little Red Riding Hood, where are you going? Little Red Riding Hood, not knowing that you're not supposed to talk to strangers, especially when they're talking wolves, I mean, come on. She told him, oh, I'm going to my grandmother's house. She's sick, so I'm taking her some food so she will feel better. She lives about 20 minutes down that way. And the wolf said, oh, and thought to himself, this little girl looks very tasty. I bet if I beat her to her grandmother's house, I could have 2 meals today, grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood. So then he said to Little Red Riding Hood, look at all these beautiful flowers just off the path. I bet your grandmother would love it if you stopped and picked some for her. And Little Red Riding Hood stopped and thought about it. Staying on the path was kind of boring, and a nice bouquet of flowers did liven up a room and might make grandmother feel better. So Little Red Riding Hood wandered off the path and started picking flowers. While she was busy, the wolf ran to grandmother's house and snuck in through the window and ate grandmother all up. So scary. And by the time he'd finished, Little Red Riding Hood realized that she'd spent way too much time out in the off the path picking flowers. So she hurried the rest of the way to grandmother's house, knocked on the door, let herself in. Grandmother, I'm home. And a voice called from the back room, come in, dearie. I'm much too old and sick to be getting up and coming to the door. Come to my room. So Little Red Riding Hood came to grandmother's room and brought the soup and the bread and the wine and took one look at her grandmother and realized something was amiss. This did not look like the grandmother she knew. Maybe this was a weird illness. And she said, Grandmother, what big ears you have. She had big wolfy ears. And the wolf said, oh, they're better to hear you with, my dear. But grandmother, said Little Red Riding Hood, what big eyes you have. All the better to see you with, my dear. And grandmother, what big teeth you have. All the better to eat you up with. And the wolf chomped down Little Red Riding Hood in one swallow. and it was dark inside the wolf's belly. Fortunately, a woman had been gathering wood in the woods nearby. That's kind of redundant, huh? And she heard all the commotion and screams from grandmother's house. So she came running in, and only to find the wolf and licking his lips. Little Red Riding Hood's basket spilled on the floor, and her corner of her cloak slurped into his mouth. And the woman took her axe and squared off against the wolf and cut open his belly. And when his belly split open, out tumbled Little Red Riding Hood and grandmother. And they filled the wolf's belly up with rocks so that he couldn't escape when he woke up, and dumped him in the river. And Little Red Riding Hood learned several important lessons that day. Listen to your mom and stay on the path. Don't talk to strangers, especially if they look like wolves. And maybe if you go into grandmother's house and she looks like a wolf, go for help instead of asking her why her teeth are so big. The end. I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of a new experience for me, telling a story from memory to a camera. I hope it's good. I'm going to do a couple more like this as days go on. So yeah, if you have any desire for more grim fairy tales, check your local library. Even though a lot of them are closed right now, they still have ebooks and audiobooks available. And some libraries, like Brooklyn Public Library, are giving out digital library cards for new users while we're closed, so that everyone will have a chance to use library materials. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this story, part of Storytime, and I'll see you next time. Bye!